Every year, Startup Grind hosts our SG Women Leaders Month, proudly recognizing the accomplishments of successful women leaders all over the world. These women are founders, venture capitalists, engineers, executives, educators, and more who represent our community all around the world. This month's SG Women Month is proudly presented by Google for Startups and Silicon Valley Bank.
Just a little bit about your beginnings, if you could.
Well, basically, I mean, as you guys have heard from the intro, I'm originally from Singapore, and how my interest in visual effects started was actually when I was 14. You know, I was a quiet kid, I was really shy, and I discovered the video camcorder, and that's how I kind of developed this passion in video editing as a form of self-expression. And sort of from there, it grew into visual effects, and that's kind of how that happened. So yeah. Yeah.
Is it something that one of your parents were into, or is it just something that flourished by yourself?
Good question. So no, and that's the other thing too, like in Singapore, the culture is is still very into like, oh, you have to get a 9-to-5 job, like art jobs are non-profitable, blah, blah. So my parents, well, none of them were in the field. So it's basically something that grew organically from my interest in video editing at the time, and that's how it happened.
Fantastic. And so, you know, with newfound interest in graphics, what did you do with it? I mean, how did you make it all the way out to the States to end up studying at SCAD?
Well, yeah, that was the first step. So I did, you know, because I already knew what I wanted to do when I was at that age. So I studied digital media in Singapore and then chose to pursue visual effects at SCAD West. And from there, I managed to get a break on The Walking Dead even before I graduated from the school. And that's how I sort of carried on from there. So I just continued working in the US in visual effects and eventually VR. So.
Okay, fantastic. I want to ask you, how was your learning experience in the US?
Specify that for me. Like, what do you mean?
Well, okay, so you know, obviously you decided to go, it's not really a traditional route, but you decided to go to a media university. I'm asking this because,
right.
You know, how was GAS, I guess, and maybe take away.
So the cool thing about that when I was doing visual effects is that I noticed that they don't just cover visual effects, they also cover the, you know, foundations like the arts, design, and color theory, stuff like that. And I think that is important part of learning to become an artist of whatever industry or field you're in. So with that broader mindset in terms of the creative side of things, you have a better of kind of looking at the same problem from different angles. So as a visual effects artist, that's kind of important because it's not just about visual effects. You learn other things as well that could help with that learning journey. So.
Okay, excellent. Break before you even graduated.
Yeah, so, you know,
Yeah.
because I was very quiet and, you know, like I said, when I was younger, I was pretty quiet. So what I did usually in schools is I just wander around reading notice boards. So when I was at SCAD, I was just randomly reading notice boards, and then I saw this flyer saying that, hey, there's this like competitive internship program, blah, blah, blah. So I applied to that, you know, based on my portfolio and stuff like that. And eventually, after a long ordeal and story, because I'm an international and they didn't allow internationals to be part of it. But either way, after a long story, I got in and got selected by the studio, and that's how that happened. And all because I was reading a notice board. So yeah, read notice boards.
So that led you to start doing some work on, what was it? Dad?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In
What
Los
kind of
Angeles. So basically visual effects, compositing, rotoscoping, stuff like that position as an intern. I never thought that I would be able to do. So it depends on what they assign, the kind of work they assign you. So they gave me some real shots to work on immediately on the second day when I was there, which I was like, oh, cool. So they trust me enough to do that. And yeah, that was pretty cool.
So sounds like you were thrown in the deep end though. Do you feel like you're prepared for that?
Well, I didn't feel anything. It was just a solver and solve it. And that looked at it, the approach.
After Guardians, was it back to college or did you then just move into additional productions? What can you tell us a bit about that?
So after, well, no, I was still in the US. I believe I was, after Guardians of the Galaxy, after some time, I was in San Francisco actually, working at a tech startup. So that's kind of how, after that period, I transitioned into VR by accident.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of working in the film industry and at the same time doing some work with a tech startup. Okay. And that's what's pulled you into VR, or?
Well, how that happened was when I was in San Francisco, I think that was like late 2014, a VR startup reached out to me from Los Angeles saying, hey, we saw your portfolio, whatever, we want you to kind of create this VR content for film with us. So I figured, okay, I'm not enjoying my time at that specific tech startup in San Francisco. So I gave it a shot, even though I have zero experience in VR. So I moved back to LA, and that's how kind of things went from there.
Oh, very cool. So how was the transition from, being in VFX? I guess, were you being you're a compositor, supervisor?
Yeah, compositor, yeah.
Okay, working in VR, yeah.
So that was an interesting one because I realized that, like I said, I'd never had any experience in VR. I mean, I did do a little bit of computer programming in Singapore, but that was a long time ago. So how that transition was, I realized how transferable the visual effects skills were to VR, especially when it comes to VR films or like 360 panoramic films, technically. So from there, I kind of adapted those skills to apply to VR, and so that's how that happened.
Cool. And so, all right, so you're working in VR, and I understand that you then went on to create your own startup.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or okay. So what was the transition there? Why did you go from essentially being employed within the industry to, running your own shop?
Excellent question. So when I was in LA, I took the bus to work, and I know that most people don't talk about buses in LA, they drive, whatever. So I took the bus to work, but every morning I would see like the same people coming on to the buses with permanent frowns on their faces. So they look like really miserable, like they don't want to wake up to go to their jobs, right? They have to do it because of the bills they have to pay. So I was thinking, what if I could create an entirely virtual world where these people, or just in general people, could go in and be the masters of their universe and craft their own reality. So that's how that idea came about, wanting to kind of empower these people with permanent frowns on their faces to kind of feel like they have some kind of control in their reality. So that's how I transitioned, to creating that VR startup to kind of solve or kind of create this entity for this purpose.
Okay, fantastic. And was that based out of the US or?
The VR startup, no, I left the US, went back to Singapore. There are a lot of reasonings behind that, but in general, I left and went back to Singapore for that,
Yeah. Okay, great. So were you a solo developer, or did you, establish a team? Can you tell me a little bit about your startup?
Awesome. So basically, I started with myself. I created the prototype by myself and all the design stuff as well. I think that took 2 weeks. But again, because it's such a prototype, it's like so preliminary version. From there, that's how I sort of got the team on board. Firstly, I got someone to fill in the weakness that I have, which is managing finance, accounting, stuff like that. I got someone to fill in that position, and then got the team of VR people or developers and then designers eventually. So yeah.
What was kind of delaying onboarding those individuals? I mean, why did you start just by yourself?
I think it's very important to not only prove to yourself that you could actually execute this if you need to, like for example, maybe your team or stuff like that sometimes, but listen to do it. And I think that's kind of important for attendees to take note of. It's like, even if you want to go into an industry, either you have a really strong partner that can fill in the gaps for you, or you can do it yourself initially first.
So like you said, it's about creating that vision that people can then latch onto and get excited about, and especially when you're asking people to put their money down, right? It's, you know, they say proof's in the pudding, so I guess it's having a bit of pudding for them to try. Exactly. And how was that? How can you talk to us a little bit about your, you know, approaching investors, and what was that like? I mean,
so most of them would ask me, how's this different from Minecraft or something like that, right? And that is actually a good question. And in hindsight, that was actually a very important question I should have considered. But most of the time when I approach them, it's really about selling the vision to them, but also not only that, how they can make money. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs tend to forget that investors are not just there to give you money for free without expecting anything in return. If you're looking for especially VC funding, you need to show them the numbers and to show them how you plan to return the profits to them.
Now that doesn't sound like anything they taught us at SCAD.
You don't learn this at SCAD, definitely.
So how did you pick up those skills? I mean,
well, working in Silicon Valley helps. And so when I was at San Francisco at a tech startup, you know, when you work at startups, you get to kind of hear stuff going on behind the scenes, and that in a way helps.
So, I mean, do you recommend people maybe thinking about starting a business to actually get into a startup and quietly observe, or is that
good question? I think it really depends on the industry. Because like there are some startups which are shady, and some of them just never work eventually after a few years. It really depends on your industry and how comfortable you are to just go all out and learn along the way, or you prefer to work at a startup. To me, it just so happened that I was at that startup that I learned that. Okay.
So you think at that startup, some of the big takeaways were really around how to run the business and maybe the finances and.
You mean when working at the startups?
Yeah, when you worked at the startup, you know.
Well, it's mainly how to run in terms of how the people work together in such a closed environment. But you really don't get to hear about the investment side of it. Unless you're on the managerial side of things, you don't get to hear the funding stuff. But it's mainly to see how people work together in a different kind of context. Yeah.
So, I mean, in Singapore, is there a flourishing media sector? I mean, if I try to talk about VR or 3D or animation in Oman, there's only a few very small pockets where people would even be really familiar. What's it like in Singapore? You know?
Excellent question. I would say it's a little bit similar, except that they're opening up because there is double negative. I'm not sure they're still here. There's Lucasfilm. There is Disney here, some aspect of Disney. So it depends. Right now, there is quite a strong interest in VR in Singapore, but I wouldn't peg it as close to where US is in terms of VR industry. So it really depends on what kind of media, because VR, AR is quite strong. Film, not really, but yeah, that's Singapore. Yes.
So would you describe it still as a developing market, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any insights into what do you think has created maturity or is helping mature Singapore as a media market?
Definitely, in terms of maturing the media market, I would say government incentives help a lot. I'm not sure how you guys like what kind of incentives are over there in Oman, but in Singapore they roll out a lot of incentives and programs for new startups, whether you are a local or even a foreigner. So there are some people who have come from Europe, US, other countries, Dubai, they come in and found the companies here in Singapore, and they get local government support. But again, it's very subjective to the government organization and who they choose to support. So there's always that. But yeah.
I mean, you know, our industry is led by talent. Is there a strong talent pool in Singapore? I mean, I imagine if I'm ILM coming to Singapore,
yeah,
you know.
Let's see, talent in terms of developers, yes. Talent in terms of creatives, honestly, not so much. So it's more like software programmers. There is talent, but you know, not really on the creative side. So yeah.
Okay. So were those big organizations like ILM, the studios, were they doing a lot of training in-house to kind of get people up to speed, or are you aware?
Good question. No, I believe they do hire locals because yes, there is visual effects schools here that, you know, pumps out students, and then these students get internships at ILM in Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes they do transfer. Yeah.
So you do have a VFX school in Singapore?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. Excellent. So, okay, so you managed to convince the money men to help finance your project, I assume, or what happened there? So you went to go get finance. I just want to continue the story. I'm sorry, I kind of...
No, it's okay. It's good question. So most of them, no, because they were not interested in a high-risk industry, which I agree, you know, in games, media, film, especially when talking to Asian investors, and they're more conservative. So they're not that interested in that. But I did have some events where I pitched on stage, and even the foreign investors, they weren't into it because they see it as a high risk. Like it's a game, it's a film. Yeah. So the only person I managed to convince was just one person, and who is somebody I knew. So this is a local, it's like a not local, I mean, it's like a personal connection that I knew who had extra cash to spend. Hope he's not listening right now. Yeah. So he had extra cash to spend and said, why not, you know, and he just helped. So that's really about it. But other than that, everything else is self-funded by myself. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So you said that then you kind of filled in the gaps in terms of specializations, but did you kind of lead at the helm in terms of the vision and running the company? You did. Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good. And can you just tell me a little bit about your experience putting your title together, and how did that all go?
Let's see. It wasn't really much about titles, but more about what that person is best known for. So for example, my CFO, who is the finance person, I get him to do marketing stuff too, even though he hates it, but he does that too. But I won't give him that label because I'd rather someone whose strong suit is that to do that. So that's how the rest of the team is managed. Well, like someone who's more of a designer will get that designer label, but they can also do other things like be a brand ambassador, stuff like that. So yeah.
So you're actually quite a flexible team in terms of everybody's kind of wearing different hats at different times.
Yeah, and I think it's important to do that at the small startup phase, especially back then when it was just like 1 year old, because you need to really utilize your entire team carefully. And you can't just have someone sitting there only wanting to do what they want to do. I mean, this works for a bigger company, which I've worked at visual effects studios. They don't allow you to do other things. But at a startup, you must be flexible to be able to kind of help the company grow in a certain extent.
Very good. Yeah, in fact, I saw the word multi-hyphenated in your description.
Oh.
You know? So, is that you referring to the fact that you wear many hats?
Good question. So I actually just recently discovered that term. I was like, oh, that's me. So I picked that. But basically it's referring to, as an artist, I can do a lot of different artist stuff. Like I can draw, I can, do all that random CG stuff, animate, blah, blah, blah. So that is just a simple way to say Renaissance man in terms of the arts.
Fantastic.
So there you go. Yeah.
And I guess you've probably found you did the same thing in your business, like you said. I mean, it's that ability to kind of shift from one role to the other,
Yeah.
So, okay, so you've established a team, you're on your journey can you tell us a little bit about, the game development process? Well, we don't get too technical, but just a little bit about the journey of putting the game together, how it was received.
Oh, it was really fun. I believe, I might be wrong, I can't recall this properly, but 6 or 7 months, I think 7 months, right? So we developed this whole thing within 7 months, and that was really fun because everything was remote. So you had to trust that your IP, especially IP, you know, in film is very hard to do that, but it's going to be protected throughout this entire process. So after we developed the game and the team from all over the world put this together, we launched it. It was an exciting moment to see how our testers or our existing customers would feel about it. And then we gave it a certain time frame to test that. And then we look at the data and see, okay, should we proceed or what things need to be changed and stuff like that.
Okay, so your team was actually, okay, so your team was from around the world. So
Yes.
you set up a remote working, your business was set up like around a remote working model?
Yes.
Okay, very cool. So from what kind of places were your team from? Just to kind of give the audience an idea.
Let's see, we have Singapore, we have Canada, we have US, we have Italy, we have Nigeria.
Okay.
So,
And
all over the place. Yeah.
And so what motivated you going overseas to find that talent?
Good question. One of the answers was, I believe what I mentioned earlier, in Singapore, you know, I did try to look for local talent, but unfortunately, and maybe because I'm so biased, because I've been sort of trained in the US or whatever, but I couldn't find the creative talent necessary and willing to do this with me. So that's how I expanded abroad, because I knew that, okay, look, if you guys don't want to do this, whatever, screw you. I'm going to go overseas and find the talent that I need. And that's how that happened.
And so what was it like running that way? I mean, running a business. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How did you handle that? I imagine it must be challenging at moments, or?
Well, if you have proper systems set in place, it's not as challenging as it sounds, because ultimately, if you think about it, a company is just an entity with policies that you need to enforce. So when it was all remote, and by the way, one of the reasons why I did set up as remote initially off the cuffs is because I wanted to save capital on rent. I didn't want to pay office rent. Yeah, so once it's remote, just need to set up some company policies and enforce them. So for example, in remote environments, you know, it's very easy for someone to ghost you and disappear because they can just not log in for days. So you need to have certain policies to say, okay, if a person or if an employee doesn't show up after X number of days and they don't give you advance notice, it just vanished, you have to consider that they have deliberately abandoned the job and that you have to pull the plug on them. So you have to enforce these policies. So it's really about creating systems. Yeah.
Okay. And was that something you had to exercise, or did things just fall into place nicely? I mean,
no, when it's a startup, there's always going to be ups and downs. So there were, I believe there was one person, I'm not going to name names, but there was one person that did that, you know, just ghosted and disappeared without giving us an advance notice that he's planning to do whatever. So I just said, okay, X number of days pass, have to pull the plug, you know, because if not, if everyone else is looking at this and they see, how come this user is not logged in? It's gonna erode the company culture. They're gonna feel less confident in your ability as a leader, and then they're gonna probably maybe do the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to create a culture of just disappearing.
Yeah.
So what are some of the, I guess, qualities that you look for in people to work with you remotely? You know, what are some of the attributes? Because actually, a lot of artists today want to work remotely. So you know, you being an employer of remote artists, what is it you were looking for? You know,
good question.
As a business
owner. So when we were starting out, both me and just the other guy, the finance guy, we did get a lot of people applying, but mainly because half of them didn't read the thing properly. They thought that we were going to employ them locally and give them like a Singaporean pass or whatever. But that aside, what we were really looking for was someone that was very passionate. So I didn't discriminate, you know, if I see someone doesn't have the qualifications, but they are really, really passionate and they show it, I will give them the opportunity if they're a good fit, rather than someone who's just, I want to get the next stepping stone. The other thing I look for also, obviously, for artists especially, is they have to have the portfolio. And if they don't have it, they have to show in their portfolio that they have the potential to have it, to grow. So that's how I train them when I employ them. Yeah.
Okay, so you're having to invest time and effort into actually upgrading people's skill sets. I mean, like you said, you spot somebody with potential, but then you were actually investing time into them.
Yes, I think that's partially important because, like, you don't want, or at least for me as an employer, I don't want people to feel like I'm just using them to create this thing. They have to feel like they're getting something in return. And since you know, as a startup, you can't pay them like exorbitant amount of salary. I think training them is a good kind of compensation for that, especially if they're so willing to learn and to contribute. So yeah.
Fantastic. So, okay, so now you've got your team together, you're rock and rolling, your first version's coming out. What happened next?
Okay, there's a little bit of a delay, so I didn't quite catch that.
Confusing question. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it says my connection's unstable. All right, I'll try again.
Oh, no.
So you've got the money together, you've managed to, no?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can you?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Are we okay now?
It's a little bit laggy, but I can somewhat understand what you're saying.
So you've managed to get the money. So you've managed to get your money to and team to. We're doing some testing. So tell me about how was your game received, and you know, what were your next moves?
Okay. All right. So when it was launched, there's always going to be that initial exponential spike in people signing up, but you can't be deceived by that because you have to see how it kind of develops over time. So that was that spike. And then everyone was in it, testing it out, having fun. But over time, it sort of dipped down to kind of a slow grind, and then to like the activities are just like, oh, people just try it and then they take it off. So I would say that the reception is mixed because we did do it virtually. We launched virtually, and we also had like a few exhibition spots. The ones where we were able to be there to show them, they seem to enjoy it more. I think perhaps because we were there. But ultimately, the data showed to us, right, for those who are offline, who are not there, we're not there with them, and they're downloading it and trying it on their own. It kind of showed that, okay, they're only spending like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. They're not long enough in order to kind of like justify the existence of this game, or let alone spend money for the game. So based on that data, we had to determine, okay, we were at a crossroads. We gave it a specific number of months to test this, and now we have the data. What are we going to do? Are we going to go out there, raise some more to pivot, just to pivot, because it's quite expensive for games? Either that, or should we pull the plug? You know, so that's how we came to that kind of decision to, okay, data shows this, we do this kind of thing. Yeah.
So what did you do? Did you pull the plug, or?
Yes. So it was, I know, right? Yeah. So it was like a clinical decision because I was thinking, okay, you can't, I know that some people get caught in this trap where, oh, you know what, it's my baby, I'm going to save it, I'm going to keep tossing good money after bad. But you have to think about it logically, right? Even if you pull the plug and you quit, you save money, save your time to invest in something else that might work. This this game has proven that, okay, it's not sustainable enough for people to and their attention for them to want to continue, even if we invested and sunk in more money, like sunk cost fallacy, into this game. It doesn't mean that like it's going to be the turnaround time for it to profit is not going to be sustained. It's not going to outlast the life of the business in terms of the capital shrinking. So that's important, and that's how, you know, clinically decided to pull the plug after a reasonable amount of runway to test.
So it sounds like you're actually a very good balance of creative and business, because, you know, for a lot of creatives, it's a very emotional journey. And you know, like you said, it's my baby, I don't want to pull the plug on it. I mean,
yeah.
So how are you developing that balance between, you know, just you know, the daydreamy, creative, and the more pragmatic, you know, business-minded person? You know, how you separate?
That is an interesting question. I never had to answer that question before. So I think I mean, I don't like to say that it is a personality thing, but it could be a personality thing. But I believe you can develop that too. I just don't know what to suggest to develop that. Because to me, I guess for me, it's just very innate. Because when I was younger, I did, okay, maybe this is something that could be looked into. Maybe, you know, when I was younger, I was also into computer programming, which is, again, not very creative. It's very logical, right? So maybe that helped when I was younger. So I'm not sure what to suggest to create a balance, but perhaps if we're talking about just being less emotional, meditating. Meditating could help, I guess. I don't know. And so I can't suggest anything, but that's what I can think about right now.
Or perhaps business, you know, could also work, you know. So
okay, audio's getting, yeah.
Okay. Can you still hear me, or am I just too
Yes.
choppy?
It's just a little bit laggy sometimes, but I can hear you now.
Okay. So you decide to pull the plug on your baby, and so have you moved on to new projects, or what are you currently up to?
Yes, so that's interesting. Well, that's a good question, because when I pulled the plug, there was something else that I was doing. So I had a side to my side startup. So something else that I was doing that was profiting. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to pull the plug on this baby, but I'm going to invest in that baby. So there you go. So yeah, so that's the thing. That's one of the things anyway that basically I'm doing, because it showed that it was a promising thing. So basically right now, like just what I can say for that is that it is out there and it's kind of quite good. Yeah.
So we have a top secret project going on that maybe you can tell us about in a year or two.
Yeah, sure. Like you know, you can look me up, and then there you go. Online, everything's going to be online. So yeah.
So have you gone back to being a solo? Are you working on it again solo as a proof of concept, or do you have a team again?
It's solo for now.
Okay.
And sometimes the occasional freelance, but yeah, usually solo. So, and that's something too for the audiences to take away is sometimes you gotta have to, like when I started out the VR startup too, you have to kind of be able to do things on your own first. And then when you need to scale a little bit, then you can bring in people to fill in the gaps. Yeah.
So do you find yourself as a solo developer kind of also having to build skills continuously, or is there something you always do?
Yeah, so that's important because things are always changing, especially in tech. So you have to kind of keep learning.
Okay, so I think we've kind of come to the part where I'm starting to drop on my side of things, but I did have some. I just want to ask you, what do you think is your greatest challenge to date? You know.
Yeah, I thought about that question, and so let's see. So I would say to date, like it's hard for me to say something's a challenge, because to me, like my mindset is that after I conquer a challenge, I no longer see it as a challenge. So even if I look back at it and I reflect, I'll say, well, it wasn't that bad as bad as I thought. But I would say, like, if I had to pick an event or moment in time that I have to still label it as challenging in hindsight, would be when I was a kid in Singapore and I was bullied for like 10 years. And the reason why it's such a challenge is because of the time span, you know, being in such an oppressed, ostracized position for that long made it challenging. So yeah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. That's a local Arabic saying. So it's something when something good happens, we say MashaAllah. So just curious, how did you convince yourself to move from a stable job to being self-employed?
Good question. So let's see. So that was at the time when I left to go to create that VR startup when I was in LA. Okay, so for me, again, this is just part of my personality that to me, I cannot stand working for somebody else. So that's just part of my core. It's like, I can't tolerate knowing that my schedule is being controlled by somebody else. Now, for those who are thinking of starting up, I would kind of not recommend you guys do what I did, where I just, of course we all left on amicable terms, just to clarify, but if you have bills to pay or if you have a family to feed, I do recommend that you stick to your job, your paying job, your day job, and then do the startup on the side. But to me, it's because I could not tolerate it in my bones. So emotionally strongly, that I had to leave and create my own company, partially part of the thing. And the other one was because of the people on the buses, but yeah.
And that's interesting to me, because I mean, it kind of sounds like you left to the States to pursue your passion for film and entertainment, and then you're saying at the same time, working for somebody wasn't your idea of paradise. So
yeah, I know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through that. We have a very romanticized vision about what it means to do a certain kind of job, and then some people just arrive there and say, guys, but I guess at the end of the day, that journey has taught you everything you needed to get to where you are today. So
yeah, and to clarify too, like the visual effects industry, although yes, it's cool to work on such great projects, it is still a job. I mean, you're still going there to do something for somebody else. So unless you're the director or the producer, like your work is just, that's it, it's a job. It's any industry regardless, it's kind of a job. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly that initial creative spark disappears and it just turns into the grind,
exactly.
which and ready to do, it's just part of it, delivering.
I know. And it's funny because I've met some people in the visual effects industry over there who I asked them why do they want to do this, and they say, oh, because I like creating movies. Well, think about it. Okay, sure, you like creating movies, but you're not the director or producer of this film. You're still creating for somebody else. You're not actually creating your own movie, even though you're contributing to it. So there's that dichotomy there. But yeah.
Yeah, where I guess as in a smaller team, a smaller business, you do have that opportunity to contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a few technical questions. So, what kind of return on investment is expected by investors, and in what time frame? So like, what were you facing in terms of expectation from your finance guy?
So from the okay, so this is it depends on the terms that is set. It really depends on the investor's personality too. And the other thing too, that people should know is that when you're getting an investor into your company, you're kind of recruiting them also. They're also getting their personality. So don't forget that when you're looking for investment, it's not just about the cash. You're also getting them as a person. So you want to be very careful with that. But as for that question specifically, like, it depends on your startup and how the terms are set by them and by you. So it's hard to answer that question.
I guess it's all about what you can negotiate, right?
Yeah, exactly. It depends
trust.
on.
Yeah. We had a question come in about employees. I just said the word trust. Now you've got an employee working across the world. How is it that you're logging their hours and then kind of you're getting value as an employee?
Okay, so as an employee, we did set up some systems for them to log and track the hours. So that's the thing that we did. As for value, there'll be specific training sessions that I did remotely for the artists, for example, for them to get them up to speed with the latest tech or software that's relevant to the project. And we do have virtual happy hour. So that's pretty fun. So those are just a little bit of a few things there that we implemented that kind of helps kind of bring these remotely distanced people together in some sense.
Did you find that you had to be the one kind of leading at the front in terms of pulling the pack, or did you find people quite autonomous?
Good question. So at first, yes, especially the ones that needed training, the ones with potential, they needed for me to set an example. But after you set the example, that's when you can, know that, okay, they're going to be doing whatever things that they're going to do on their own. We don't control how they do things as long as they just do it. So you need to set an example first, and then they kind of do things on their own. So yeah.
Set the pace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We had another question come in from Mazen Al-Nubi. He said, what were the skills that really helped you the most with your startup?
Okay, good question. Skills that helped me the most, definitely knowing how to code. That helps. And the other thing too is kind of negotiate. That's also the other skill that helped, because there were like certain programmers that we got on board that they were really pricey, but knowing how to negotiate a win-win was helpful. And of course, technical skill wise, you need to know like how to at least do visual stuff that you need related to your product if it's a creative company.
Right.
So yeah.
Very good. Do we have any additional questions, or should I just keep firing? Should I just keep firing? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm curious. So okay. So the first project off the bat wasn't a flop. It was a learning opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we all need those, big learning moments. What do you think you learned the most?
Well, I definitely learned that it is so worth it to give it a test, do it, give it a try, and then fail and learn something from it, than to be afraid and never even try at all. So like if I think back, and had I not, it wasn't, to me, I just did it, right? But I'm sure there'll be people that'll be wondering, okay, should I do it? Should I not? What if I fail? But the thing is, like, if you don't even try, you will never know. At least when you try and it fails, you learn something. And then if it wins, you get a successful business. So it's a win-win, right? So yeah, that's one of the biggest takeaways from that startup experience.
Okay, great. Now, have you given up on VR, or do you still think? Oh, okay. Sorry.
We do have a few more questions, but I just sent it over to you for you to go through.
No, okay. I just received some more.
Sorry.
Okay, so let's just go to those. So somebody's asking, are there any online resources that you recommend for people planning to start up a similar project?
Online resources. Let's see. I didn't actually have any when I started out, so I'm kind of drawing a blank on what to recommend. But I would say, like, look into your competitors. That's a good start. So look into your existing competitors and do your research on that. Because initially when I started too, I was thinking, like this is so rare. But then I realized, there are other things that are similar that could be a competitor. So it might not be a direct competitor, but it could be indirect one. So look into those online. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of any favorite learning resources in the VFX and VR realm, is there a place that you kind of always find yourself going back to, communities or?
Honestly, no, because I get those on the job. So when I am doing a project, like as a freelance or whatever, I actually get that information on the job from the people around me itself. So that's why I know, because people just feed me that info. Yeah.
I have a question here asking, does VFX majorly play a role in entertainment, or does it also have a role in other sectors? So, a lot of people kind of see VFX and computer graphics and, VR all being just for entertainment, but are there other spaces that you can apply those skills?
Yes, for sure. There is architectural visualization, which is in some sense visual effects and CG. There is, let's see, simulation, some like airplane simulation, stuff like that requires visual effects, and you'd be surprised, mechanical fluids. So there's many different sectors, even real estate. So, yeah.
Have you yourself kind of developed in those arenas, or have you tried to stay close to gaming and storytelling?
I mainly stuck to entertainment because that's something that I prefer. But I have met people who are doing either specifically medical visualizations or architectural stuff, but those are very few.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. Somebody said, thank you so much for sharing. Your story is very inspirational to us. So great job. What are the best practices that you've learned that you would like to tell all beginners when it comes to starting VFX? So, you know, somebody who's fresh to VFX and VR.
Good question. People ask me that a lot, so I just say the same thing: hard work and passion. Because firstly, you need the hard work in order to survive the grind, and you need the passion in order to sustain your continuing to survive the grind. So because for example, when I was working on Guardians of the Galaxy, blah, 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 all those films, sometimes you work 80 hours a week, like Monday to Sunday. Yeah. So you need to be able to sustain that, and with your passion, and hard work. That's how,
In fact, one of my sons, Yusuf, he's just about to get ready to go to university, and we're kind of looking at, he's an illustrator and really into VFX, but we're really kind of starting to look now at the alternative. I mean, you know, there's a lot of schools online, a lot of great content online to, you know, learn the specialization. Is that something you think is a valid path to success in our industry?
Yes. I've met different artists who either got a master's and they went to SCAD, or they have no background, they left school, and they are still working the same job as me. So yeah, any route, as long as you can learn something useful, whether it's online or at a university, it really depends on your learning style. So I do look positively on the online learning community, because firstly, you can get them for free or cheap. And secondly, you have a virtual global community. It depends on the person's learning style, if they prefer in-person or online. So yeah.
Okay, very cool. I think we've already kind of spoken about your biggest challenges.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about your coding skills? So you're going to lose me here because I'm not a coder. So.
Okay. So, well, I lost the question because the audio got chopped up. So you said something about coding skills, right?
Yeah. So somebody in the audience wants to understand a little bit more about your coding skills and maybe, I guess, your proficiency in coding. Like, what is it that you know about coding?
Okay. So basically, I started off when, how old was I? 16. So I started off with Java because in the school at the time in Singapore, they required everyone to do programming. So majority of the students were like so dissatisfied with that, but I saw it as a learning opportunity. So I was really good at Java. And then after that, from Java, I also learned, let's see, what was next? After Java, it was Python, and then it was Mel, and then it was C++, and C#. So the last two were more recent because it was like game developing programming languages, but those are basically my spectrum of understanding coding. And I think regardless of which language you choose, as long as you know how to read code, I think that's good enough. You don't need to be able to be a whiz, but if you know how to understand it, that's helpful.
I guess especially when communicating with the coders, and you know, makes complete sense. This is a really interesting question. So as an originally shy person, overcome being shy and become an assertive leader.
Oh, so there was a question or was that a statement? Sorry, the audio
it's the way I'm asking.
Okay, how does a shy person become an assertive leader? That's the question, right?
Or you personally, how did you go from shy to assertive? Yeah.
That's a good, I never thought about that. Because I always just, to me, it's just like, I always felt I was just naturally growing, evolving. I think over time, you shed that shy nature. There are some people that eventually, you know, still become very shy, even when they're 40s, 50s, 60s. But I feel like if you, once you develop that inner confidence, then I would say that you naturally shed that shy nature. So it's all about developing the inner confidence.
So what was your path to inner confidence?
Again, it's a natural progression, so it's hard to specify a moment where I was like, yes, I've developed confidence. I believe, yeah, again, it's hard to determine. It's just like a natural, you'll know when you grow out of it, because it becomes so ingrained in your personality that it's hard for you to even decide when it happened. So, like me.
Well,
So,
you definitely sound like somebody who goes out of their comfort zone. So I think when you survive jumping into the deep end a few times, you know, you kind of begin to know maybe everything isn't so bad.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I'm taking away from your story. You know, it's fantastic. Somebody had a question: was SCAD hard?
No, it depends on how you define hard. To some, it was hard, and to some of the people I spoke to at the time, they will always complain about how they don't like this professor, or how this is so difficult. I'm sure you know, but it's actually not hard. It's fun. You know, it depends. Like to me, hard is fun, and if it's hard, it's fun. But it wasn't hard to me. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, somebody says here they're curious because they felt like they missed out. Maybe this person was hoping to go and didn't get a chance to. But I wanted to kind of just chime in there and say that, you know, SCAD to me was a great learning experience in terms of it personally gave me a lot of good networks. But I still believe that this is a field that you can really get very involved in without necessarily going to one of those big schools.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
You may have missed out on some things, but you know, it's still a very exciting space to learn in. You know, so you know, don't feel too bad about missing out. You know. Okay, this person has a question. Have you had individuals within your team who excel and asked for leadership roles? In that case, how do you elevate them? You know, and
good questions. So yes. And yes, but anyway, so yeah, there was this one individual, really good and was pitching in ideas all the time. Everyone was just sitting back, kind of, well, they're not chilling, but they're just sticking to what they were comfortable doing at the time. But this guy was actually is the guy from Nigeria. So if he's listening, I'm giving credit to you. But So I spoke with him. I had a one-on-one conversation with him about his interest and what he wants to develop further for just his own personal interest, as well as how that could contribute to the company. So that's how we got him to, you know, to get a leadership role or get a bigger role than he originally had. So yeah.
Okay. Was there anything that you specifically changed about his responsibilities, or was there additional education, or how did his role change? You know, what did you do?
So basically, the essence of it was I trusted him more to represent the company further. Now, I know that when you hire someone, usually you don't know the person, and it's like risky to just trust them to go out and spread good things about the company. But because he is so dedicated and so enthused, you know, that's part of the essence, was that he had a higher responsibility in carrying the company's name forward.
Right. Okay, great. So his rise in the business was just natural. He was already doing it, you know.
Yeah, and he asked for it. So you have to ask for it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, somebody had a question about game engines. What do you think is the best beginner game engine?
Unity. For beginners, for sure. Unity, they have a lot of tutorials, a lot of strong community, and it's also very easy to pick up. In fact, like the prototype that I did by myself was with Unity. But that's good for beginners. If you want the really extreme, go to Unreal. But again, for beginners, you want to wait around the pond, just Unity.
Okay, so it's just an easier entry.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Let's see what else I had here. So that was all from the audience so far. Is there any more out there? Oh, okay. Well, Lau has a question, but she's trying to save the bandwidth. So, if you were to start another business, what big problem is it that you would like to solve?
Well, it depends on what this problem is and how personally invested I am in solving the problem. Because again, there are a lot of problems in the world, but if you're not invested in wanting to solve it, like let somebody else whose problem is that's the problem that grinds their gears solve it. Right now, I would just say like it really depends on where this problem is and how that matters to me. So for example, the VR startup, when I created that, it was because, I felt the pain of these people going on the buses, or the perceived pain anyway, of these people going on the buses looking so miserable, like they want to like quit their jobs. So I was thinking, if we could create a world that they can live in and create their own reality, that'd be great. So that's the kind of problems that I was interested in terms of like, the unfair situation or whatever related to empowering people. And I think that kind of boils back to perhaps when I was bullied, I felt like, the kind of unfair situation, or like I was so not empowered at the time. So that's the kind of issues I like to solve.
Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes when it's personal, because you're drawing from all that experience.
And the passion and stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly. I have a question. Actually, I just want to say to the audience, if you have any questions, we're starting to run out of time here. So get your last questions in now.
And my laptop's going to die, just so you know.
Okay, I have a quick question. So with your business ideas, are you Singapore focused? Is your audience Singaporeans?
It depends on the business idea, but for the startup, and most of the time, no. Actually, I really am only in Singapore because like the convenience of setting up the business infrastructure is so simple. It takes less than 10 minutes, and the infrastructure is also very strong banking, very strong finance. Singapore, that was one of the reasons why. But my audience essentially is not limited to just Singaporeans.
Okay. So you tend to kind of look for a broader audience. Is there a particular reason why?
No, it just depends on the product or the service. So for example, right now I do teach online. That is a creative stuff online. So that is a broad thing. It is not limited to just a specific geographical location. So it depends on the service. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how to answer that, but yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to let the audience know that if you'd like to learn from Vicki directly, she's got some courses on Udemy. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
It was Udemy.
Yes.
Don't get that wrong.
Yes. One of them, yeah.
Okay, so what made you take up teaching?
Well, again, that was a natural thing. Everything's so natural. It just flowed organically. Well, no, actually, when I was in the US, I taught, let's see, teenagers, adults, people with autism. So that was interesting because I realized that in teaching you learn too. So in some sense, perhaps you could say that it's also like I'm teaching myself by teaching. Yeah. And I thought that it was a very fun experience. So that's kind of a natural progression from there.
Very good. All right, so we've got some last second questions. Let's get to these.
All right. Hopefully my laptop's still
okay, this one that's so hard to start in Unreal. Everybody feels your pain. I'm new to engines, but I saw that Unreal is the best choice for me. Do you think I have to go ahead, or should I start a new journey with Unity?
No, if you want to go Unreal, go Unreal. The thing is, like, even though Unity is very beginner friendly, if you have no interest in Unity, don't do it. Like, for example, even let me think of a good example. So let's say like you are learning finance, right? But you hate finance, like, so your passion is not there and you want to do visual effects. So go for the visual effects, because with passion, you'll learn better and you kind of adapt better. So if you want to do Unreal, just go ahead and do Unreal.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the word passion keeps coming up, because I think, this is not an industry you get into without passion. The cost you pay personally, emotionally, in terms of time and hours, means that you really have to be in love with what you're doing. So you're right. I remember first opening Maya, it's got like 300,000 little menus and menus inside menus, and it seemed like a daunting task, but stick at it and you overcome. Somebody asked, do you think we should start the RTX thing?
RTX?
The ray tracing on the gaming card, Is it important?
I don't have an opinion.
No opinion.
So neutral.
And do we need supercomputers? Somebody asks to be able to do VR.
That is a very deep question. But to answer that, do we need supercomputers? I think it really depends. It really does depend, because so what, you have supercomputers, like what if the software is not compatible, whatever, stuff like that. There are other things too, like, you know, the more powerful computers become, the more filmmakers will expect bigger and better things, and then you just have the same problems with a bigger computer or like a stronger computer. So yeah, it depends. It's a very complex question, but an excellent one.
But to begin dabbling in VR, do you really need a very expensive rig, or is it something most people can kind of put together?
Good question. Okay, so for VR specifically, I do think that you can hack it together. I believe it is possible, and I've seen a few examples, but again, it requires that you be very resourceful to do that. So I didn't do it because like, I'm just like, just give it to me like quickly. But some people, they want to do that, they can do it. Yeah.
Okay. So Willa has popped back up on the screen. Hello.
Hello, just because we only have 5 more minutes, because this is a startup grind link, so I think it might not survive after 6:15.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, just so if you have any last minute questions, like we have 2 minutes for that.
Okay, I'm at 24%, so just
okay. So you're I hope I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think we said till 6:15, correct? So we've got 5 minutes.
Exactly,
we'll
5
wrap it up exactly at that time. Yeah, unless the audience is called for more, but I don't see a riot.
I do. There is someone asking specifically about hardware tips and what is your computer specs. If you can answer that like super quickly, I think that's going to be our last question. Very technical.
Okay, that is very technical and something that I have no like interest in personally. That's why I can't answer it really. But my hardware is, I have a laptop. I have 2 laptops, Windows and a Mac. That's as much as I know. Like I said, I just want to quick. So,
and for me to answer that as well is, you know, we live in an amazing time where, you know, most gaming cards today will run most high-end software pretty competently, way beyond an entry-level person's ability to maximize. So absolutely, you don't really need to invest crazy in hardware to get going, you know. And then, you know, hopefully by the time you actually need to put some money down, you've, you know, raised some investments. So what was I just had one more question about generalist versus specialist.
Okay.
You consider yourself a specialist or a generalist? Just
it depends. It depends on what's required for the project. So some companies, for example, when I work at studios, they only want you to be a compositor, and that's what you only get to do. For my own stuff, I have to be a generalist. So the answer to that question is it depends. So
do you think having some specialization is important though, along on your journey?
Yes, although I do know people who are too specialized that they can't see outside of the big picture. So yes, to a certain extent.
Okay, big picture thinking is important. Great.
Yes.
So Willa, are we kind of going to call that done?
I think so. Thank you, Vicki, so much for joining us today, and thank you, Anwar, for leading the conversation. Thank you to all our attendees for being here. I really appreciate it. I love the questions that were coming in. So I hope it was as informative to all the attendees as it was for me. I just want to thank our event partners at the end of this. Thank you, Reality CG, for supporting our event. And thank you, SAS Center for Entrepreneurship, as well as Phone Art Oman. You guys are awesome. And Vicki, I hope you get to visit us in Oman as soon as it is lifted. Come in the winter, because it's a beautiful country, and the winter here is beautiful to discover. So I hope we get to meet in person sometime soon.
That'd be great, and I'm so pleased to hear that it's winter, because there's no winter here in Singapore. So.
It's like 25 degrees. It's perfect for beaches and hiking, and it's a beautiful, beautiful time of year to visit. So yes, you should definitely come here. Thank you all. I'm seeing all the thank yous coming in. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
And Vicki, I shared your LinkedIn profile with everyone. So if anyone would like to connect, they can contact you there. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you all have a great evening. I will send, so I'll upload this call and share the link with everyone so you can access it later, and I'll send it to you as well, Vicki. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
And to all of our young media artists out there, good luck.
Yes, absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.